What's good, party people? How we feeling? Sorry for being late. I, you know, I had a little detour I took when one of the wonderful ladies I know sent me a little text message there, and a bunch of wine later. I'm ready to break down the IQ realities that the leftists don't want you to look at, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna dig into some hard science here about intellectual capacities based on ethnicity and genetics here. Super taboo topic. Not supposed to talk about it, but we're gonna do it, ladies and gentlemen. Sharing it out on the Facebook. Talking race and IQ, government shutdown, and more. All right, ladies and gentlemen. What's up? What's up on a Tuesday? I'm fired up. You should be too. All right. We're well into the government shutdown, the longest government shutdown in the history of the country, and I'm loving it, dude. There was this post that came out on the Daily Caller. They had a little exclusive there. Somebody within the Trump campaign is suggesting that we continue the government shutdown for as long as possible so that we can demonstrate how much more efficient government is when it's much smaller. And what a lovely notion there. Let's cut the fat. Let's cut these, useless, bureaucratic, fucking do-nothings from their public sector cushy bullshit jobs, and let's, show them how little they are needed in this economy. What's up, Mr. Brian G? Glad to have you on the stream. Good to see you. Yeah, dude. So there's the government shutdown in full swing right now, and it's lovely. Let's shut more of it down, and let's trim that motherfucking fat there, ladies and gentlemen. We want a lean, mean federal government that does absolutely nothing except defend our borders. And currently the goal seems to be do everything except protect our borders. We want to go and we want to protect Israel's borders. We want to set up military bases in 300 different countries around the world. We want to have a giant welfare state that funds the immigrants that sneak in and gives the left wing a voter base there. We want to, bail out the banks. We want to prop up these insurance companies as monopolies. We want to we want to have the Federal Reserve dictate our entire monetary policy. We want to, give these big corporations beneficial legislation and regulations and whatnot. Everything except protect our national sovereignty and our borders. So let's reverse that equation there and have them do nothing but protect our borders, which the possibly the last true geniuses in the country, the founding fathers intended. Let's set up a lean, mean federal government that does nothing except protect the homeland, and that's all we need, ladies and gentlemen. I would go a step further and say we don't need taxation to fund any military or whatever. We could all voluntarily fund that, but that's an argument for another time. I mean, we have a giant bloated federal government that continues to grow and steal everyone's money, and just it's a bloodlust upon the citizenry and that has to be slowed down at least before we can move on to more higher-minded notions of even smaller government. But let's weed the garden, shall we? We're overrun with unnecessarily bureaucratic weed overgrowth, and let's freeze them out. All right, that's the government shutdown. We're putting a layer of permafrost on the government weeds there, and we're letting them wither and fray and die, and to the horror of the left wing, who is only exists to expand government power and import third world immigrants to vote them into it so that they can control your life. But I got a feeling that's not going to happen because people are fed up with it and they're tired of it. And you can only tell white people that they're racist and horrible and inherently evil for so long before they finally wake up and say, you know what? What's in it for me? What's in it for me to have this big multicultural society with this giant welfare state that lets illegal immigrants come in and just siphon off the tax money from actual productive people and not assimilate? What's in it for me to to try to operate in this wonderful multicultural paradise here with cultures that are inherently incompatible with Western civilization and generally on average are lower IQ than the host population, and they have a little trouble participating in the modern technological society there. So there's it either goes two ways. I mean, either the white people dumb themselves down and go to the lowest common denominator, or we grow a spine and say, not cutting it. we want to support you. You're just not cutting it. You got to support yourself, and that's kind of our ethic here in this society. Is you support yourself, and you contribute some form of value to the rest of society, and you don't just siphon resources from everybody else. It's funny that the left supports the welfare state, and meanwhile they have this anti-human climate agenda that fundamentally looks at humans as consumers and not producers. All we do is exhale carbon dioxide and drive around our fossil fuel cars and destroy the planet, and we don't contribute anything of value to humanity. We're just a plague on the planet, like the drones in the Matrix. We're just like the what are those drones called in the Matrix? The clone guys that all look the same. We're a virus on this planet, Mr. Anderson. I'm an environmentalist. Your carbon footprint is destroying the planet, Mr. Anderson. It's about time you paid Al Gore his carbon taxes, Mr. Anderson. You're living this first world lifestyle, and it's very evil. You must be stopped. We must bring in multiculturalism and Islam to topple your culture, Mr. Anderson. You're a virus. That's what environmentalists sound like nowadays. What's up, Justin Potts? What's up, Kashava? Yeah, we're gonna have some fun today. What's good, Dirt Weed? I'm feeling good today. Sorry I'm a little late. I had a little diversion there. One of my wonderful lady friends hit me up with a text message right when I was about to go live, and I hurried off to the CVS to get a bottle of wine and enjoy the festivities. And now long story short, I'm extra fired up to break down some cultural narratives here that are being purveyed upon us. And oh, Brian G, how about we acknowledge the bell curve and work from there? Anyone? Oh my God, that you lead me right into my central topic of the day, Brian G. Immaculate commentary. This is what I wanted to talk about today. This is the biggest red pill that you need to understand, and that we need to get the left wing to understand, because they're so pro science. The left wing is so, they're science literate, and they trust scientists when they say there's going to be a big climate disaster, and they say that we need to believe the scientists because they're so, egg-headed and brilliant. And, consensus is reality, and Bill Nye told you so. So, if you want to change your gender to any one of the 52 different alternatives, you can do that. And that's their idea of science. But, there's a thing called actual science that's going on in the field of genetics that they really do not like talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so there's a man named James Watson, Nobel Prize winning geneticist, and he's 90 years old, and he is now being shunned and shamed as a racist because he refuses to lie about the data that has to do with race and IQ. Now, he looks at the data and he says, it seems that Europeans have a higher average IQ than sub-Saharan Africans. Now, that is heresy to say that, because we're all supposed to be the same, you see. We're all supposed to be the same. It's a given that black people can run faster and jump higher and they have bigger dicks. And, that's all a given because, we believe in evolution here at Outrage TV. So, of course, we evolved differently in every aspect of our biology except our brains. You see? You see how that works there? Except our brains, the biggest, most calorie, the part of our biology that requires the most calories to function, and so therefore would theoretically be the most affected by natural selection and environmental evolution. You see, our brains, they didn't evolve differently. Now, when it comes to fast twitch muscles and dicks, those things evolve differently because they don't involve white people having an advantage. But if you are to point out that, and it's so funny that like these IQ statistics are cited as some like racist white narrative. They're like white supremacy. Meanwhile, Ashkenazi Jews and East Asians are demonstrably more intelligent on average than white people. So apparently it's a Jewish conspiracy. It's Jewish supremacy to talk about IQ. But somehow the Jews have removed themselves from that conversation, and it's all being blamed on white people. And Mr. James Watson has now had his Nobel Prize titles revoked because he refuses to lie about the data he sees in front of his eyes. That's the most important thing for you to be politically correct, is you need to be comfortable with lying with what your sense data tells you. When you see a transgender woman that used to be a man that chopped his cock off, whatever your eyes are telling you about the broadness of those shoulders or the prominence of the Adam's apple, you need to deny that, okay? And that's a woman. That's a biological woman, all right? And if you say anything different, you're extremely hateful. and you need to be dealt with. And so James Watson committed the evil heresy of looking at the data that says that, you know, white Western Europeans have a higher average IQ than Africans. And he came to this racist conclusion that white people on average are more intelligent than black people. And so he needs to be taken down because, you know, those are hate facts. You can't present any facts. And that's what's important, because, you know, we want to have an honest conversation about race in this country. That's what, you know, Black Lives Matter was calling for. It's, you know, all the blue check marks on Twitter are calling for an honest conversation on race. And what that means is that white people honestly need to shut the fuck up about race and stop being part of the conversation. What's up, Harden? You giving these nice little juicy comments here. Talking about the climate disaster. If there's any climate disaster, it will be caused by all the methane emitted in the atmosphere from animal agriculture, not because of carbon dioxide. CO2 is part of the natural life cycle of Earth. So that's your big concern, is the farts from cattle there. Interesting theory. I'd like to see some data behind it. Send me a little link there in the comments, and I will review it. Methane, as far as I know, large part of the bovine farts there are made up of methane, and you know, I don't know much about the IQ of cows, but you need to be careful there talking about, you know, how much of an effect they have on the climate, because you might be getting into, you know, cow supremacy, and it's a dangerous line you're walking there, and you need to toe it cautiously. Okay, tread lightly. All right. Yeah. People act like admitting that white people have a higher average IQ than Mexicans or blacks is somehow white supremacy. But that's just one aspect of being a human being. There's not having a high IQ, let me tell you, I've been tested, you know, anywhere between 135 and 140 IQ. Having a high IQ is not all, you know, rosy and wonderful. What it generally amounts to is a lot of, you know, unnecessary anxiety and stress about things you can't control, but just fuck with you mentally, because they're not rational to you, and thus the existence of this entire channel. You know, I'm quite annoyed and irritated by the rational inconsistencies and retard behavior of the left and their hypocrisy, and so I can't not talk about it. I'm compelled to come on here and just vomit my thoughts out to you wonderful people, and because I can't keep it inside of me, and I'm compelled to do it. Dumb people don't have that compulsion. They just, you know, can blissfully be ignorant and go through and live their lives, and, you know, just be comfortable that, you know, white people are only doing better than other groups because they're racist. And that's an easy conclusion that they come to, and it's very it's very comforting. You know, the racist white man is holding you back, and you know, we're all the same, and the only differences that arise in outcomes and outcomes between groups is because of, you know, oppression and racism and sexism and homophobia and xenophobia. And they can look at Donald Trump and not be intimidated by his competence or his achievements, or you know, by his consistency or competitiveness. They cannot be intimidated by Donald Trump, because they can look at Donald Trump and assume that he's a racist idiot and write it all off to that. so they don't have to be intimidated by the accomplishments of a guy like Donald Trump. So, you just write him off. He's a complete idiot, you see. He made billions of dollars in the New York real estate industry, had a #1 smash hit reality TV show, and won the presidency on his very first attempt at running. So, sleep tight out there, knowing that you're infinitely more intelligent than Donald Trump. Trump can really demonstrate his intelligence by not backing down and continuing this government shutdown and showing the people how useless and ineffective government really is to get anything done. Hopefully it persists into some kind of, I hope he starts a new reality show where he goes around to all these different government programs and sectors of the government that are unnecessary and tells them, I've thought about it and I've been contemplating and I've contemplated the efficiency of your department and I've looked at your accomplishments over the past decade and whatnot, and I'm determined that you're fired. That's what we elected that motherfucker fundamentally for, okay? He's the guy that says, you're fired. And that's what we want. We want, the swamp to be fired. Fire the swamp. All right? Secure the border. Fire the swamp. That's what we want. Like, that's the only way you can kill the swamp. It's like The Thing in that John Carpenter movie. You gotta kill it with fire. Kill these government bureaucrats with fire. Now, metaphorically, kill them with fire. I'm not advocating any violence here. Metaphorical violence. Let's set them ablaze politically, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, there's this huge, here's Harden talking about his methane again. Unlike carbon dioxide, methane is an actual heat-causing gas. That is why Venus is the furnace it is, despite being only marginally closer to our star than Earth. Interesting. Interesting, sir. Justin Potts says, I do wish he would pull more of our troops out of the Middle East, charge other nations more money as compensation for the work done by the U.S. and bring back more jobs to the economy, and stop tweeting. Yeah, we need to get out of the Middle East for sure, because we have a $700 billion military budget and we can't use any of it apparently for actual national defense like a wall. We have this theoretical neocon idea of national defense where we have to go over and meddle in everybody else's administration overseas and in the Middle East and, try to neurotically fucking tweak other people's governmental systems and get them to assimilate to our way of governing and like put regimes in power that agree with our policies and whatever. That's the globalist Jewish way of doing things. All right, we need to have a more based, lionized national defense budget, allocation of our defense budget. Put it all on the border. Put it all into missile defense systems, because otherwise we're not getting invaded. We have two friendly countries to the north and south, two giant oceans to the east and west. America's pretty goddamn safe. The only thing threatening us is, what George Washington and Thomas Jefferson warned of, getting too spread out militarily and trying to be an empire and, affect foreign policy in that way, and going out and trying to forcibly spread democracy as the wonderful demon George Bush tried to do. It doesn't work. All you end up doing is bankrupting yourself by, especially with the Federal Reserve System, which is the only way we can finance all of these military bases and military operations. The only way we could finance World War I, World War II, Vietnam, like none of this shit would have been possible without the Federal Reserve and going off of the gold standard and just creating this fake money that and allowing the government to go $20 trillion in debt so that they could play their little psychopathic geopolitical chess game. What we need to do is seal off the borders, have the missile defense systems in place, and have an IQ test at the border. All right? You're under 100? Sorry. Oh, dude. You need to be able to contribute to innovation. And we're going to give you a test at the border, baby. How incredibly racist would that policy be, ladies and gentlemen? That would be the most base thing of all time if Trump just instituted an IQ test at the border. That was the only immigration test. You got to take an IQ test, and if you're under 100, see ya. You can contribute to our innovation, ladies and gentlemen. It's the modern technological society. Okay, we're moving into low-skilled jobs being automated by robots and shit. We need some fast brain processing going on in this country. Hardin says, regarding Watson, he should sue the snot out of his former employees and others who have caused him to lose his career for defamation and slander. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he should definitely sue these people that are smearing him as some kind of racist just for analyzing the data. I mean, your numbers are racist. It clashes with my ideology. Aren't all people the same? All people are the same, but black people have bigger dicks and they can dunk basketballs way easier. We know Asians are really good at math, but all people are the same. As long as it puts white people below another group, then it's valid. But if white people prove to be better at anything in the data, racist. Because their ideology is literally just anti-white. It's not anti-racism. It's this perversion of history that white people are the purveyors of racism and we are the greatest oppressors in history. And it's just so false and bigoted to paint what happened to the Native Americans in North America as some kind of genocide is just incorrect and bigoted. What happened was the transmission of a smallpox virus, which there was no germ theory of disease, so we weren't coughing on blankets and handing them to the Native Americans. It was largely coincidence, and the Native Americans were largely warring with each other when we showed up, and then started warring with us. And so we were just like, you know what? You're irrelevant. We're building our civilization. Same thing with slavery. White people didn't invent slavery. Shocking revelation. White people did not invent slavery, and only 4% of the United States population owned slaves at the height of the antebellum South. And so, and who ended slavery? White Western European Christians ended slavery for the civilized world. Who brought back slavery? Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. You're welcome, You're welcome, Libya. 4% of the total United States population, Justin Potts. You think we're too soft on Trump? That's understandable. What are your criticisms of Donald Trump? I'd be interested. I don't see how the total population has any relevance to the 4% number. I mean, it's 4% of the population owned slaves um, at the height of American slavery. So it wasn't this all pervasive thing, and you go back a couple hundred years earlier, and white people were slaves in the Arab slave trade. I mean, my criticisms of Trump are not cutting enough government, not cutting enough spending. Again, I don't see the relevance of the total number of the population. You can Google that total population size of the United States in the early 1800s or whatnot. I don't know, but um, I just know it's a low single digit number of people who actually own slaves at the height of American slavery. And so it's overblown, as if, anytime you hear the word slavery, you automatically think white people owning black people. But slavery is like, it's ubiquitous across all of history and all of cultures. And, white people have been enslaved. The Arab slave trade was particularly grotesque, especially to black people. They would castrate black people, and they were particularly vicious and brutal. But Islam is progressive, um, and so you don't hear much about that. It's all about evil whitey, who allows the most immigration of any country on the face of the planet, and allows their culture to be subverted because we're so empathic and we feel so guilty that we lash ourselves and agree that we're racist and that we need to have more multiculturalism and we need to be more diverse and tolerant. And so that's what's happened, is this lowering of standards for the way of the American citizen, and lowering of standards in your own life for who you allow to be around yourself. And so it's just a race to the bottom of accept anything, have no standards, have no culture of your own. Sadiq Ahmed, which race has the highest IQ? Of all the statistics I've seen, it's Ashkenazi Jews, and then East Asians, and then European whites. Those sneaky Jews. Sneaky and smart as a whip. But yeah, it's the ultimate use of that of the sophist tool to to say that pointing out basic IQ statistics is racist. It's literally just a brazen attempt to get you to shut up and stop talking. Racist. But it's a scientific study that's been confirmed in test after test after test that there's a genealogical difference between races, and they're like, "Shut up, racist!" Ah! And it's just not working anymore. The jig is up, ladies and gentlemen. The internet has provided people too much information to put up with this nonsense, non-argument on the left, and that's why you see communities like Politically Incorrect on 4chan just exponentially growing, because people desperately want an outlet to be able to go and talk about what's real and not have this like snap emotional reaction to it, where it's like, you discard the arguments, and then just this constant ad hominem browbeating of anybody who has any rational thought. It's getting really old, and people are over it. So just tell your lefty friends, don't be a science denier. Look at race and IQ. What's up, Brain Eater? Good to see you. Asians and whites are the higher IQ races, yeah, but they don't compare to those crafty Jews out there. They're up to something, all right? And they're tinkering away at their high IQ activities out there, shifting the numbers around in the banking system. Me personally, I would like to join the Jewish conspiracy. I'm the assistant manager of my apartment complex, and the head manager is a wonderful Jewish man named Sandy. And I'm trying to join the cult, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to join in with these wonderful Hollywood Jews out here, and I'm not going to partake in any of their child sacrifices or blood ceremonies, but I want to get a piece of the pie. I'm trying to get my movies made, all right, that I've written, all right? If they introduce me to the aliens, so be it. What race do Jews belong to, or is it a race by itself? Well, it's a particular Semitic. Well, a Semitic refers to language, I believe, in the Mediterranean. So Semitic can refer to Arabs or Jews. I think Jews and Arabs are a similar ethnic group, but they shift radically when it comes to culture. So they both have a lot of in-group preference, which helps their cultures proliferate themselves and spread. But the Arabs have the troublesome practice of cousin marriage, which not the best for your IQ. Not the best for your IQ to be fucking that cousin there. Yeah, a little incestuous, and they don't typically they operate by the sword rather than the pen. Typically, they have Islam, is typically spread by the sword, and not by making any particular intellectual arguments. It's more like because they worship the Prophet Muhammad, who was a literal warlord, and married a 6-year-old girl and fucked her when she was 9. So they worship a warlord pedophile, and so that limits them culturally a little bit. The Jews, they have a strong cultural preference for the women marrying the most intelligent males instead of kind of the more physically dominant males, and so that's an inherent cultural selection for intelligence that has really worked in the Jews' favor. Like, if you think about, like, 20 years after the Holocaust, Jews had already essentially taken over the American banking system and the Hollywood studio system. Think about how impressive that is. That's some intellectual horsepower, ladies and gentlemen, and some resiliency. So I got respect for the Jews. I don't believe in this Jewish conspiracy thing. I just think it's an IQ thing, and they're to be respected and emulated to a degree. I think we could all learn a thing or two from those crafty Jews. Especially in-group preference, because white people have completely lost any sense of in-group preference. Now in-group preference is literally considered Nazism. Like, if you're a white person and you say out loud that you generally prefer to hang around other white people, you're Nazi. Do you have a problem with multiculturalism? What's the deal? You don't want to have your culture subverted and completely obliterated. You don't want to. You don't want to live under Sharia law. What is your problem with a new Muslim Congress member? Are you just bigoted? You're Islamophobic. Why do you have any self-respect? You should not have self-respect. The self-respect for white people is called white supremacy. Self-respect for white people is called the Third Reich. Okay, and that's what happens when white people have self-respect. So we need to, crumble that self-respect down, and you need to bow down and take your pegging from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Take that pegging, okay? Your time is over, white man. You're done. All right? Tanya asks, how do we change our culture back to the way it needs to be? Ostracism. Ostracism. You find out what the people around you believe. You give them the arguments for small government. You give them the arguments, for race and IQ. You give them the arguments that we have a culture that requires a certain level of IQ, and importing these third world immigrants is going to be harmful, and the welfare state, letting them get on the welfare state. You give them the arguments and the data that the left, if you look up the James O'Keefe Project Veritas undercover videos that he took with the DNC, where they volunteered for the DNC, and the DNC was like just openly like, yeah, we've been stealing elections for 50 years. We just get those illegal immigrants in here and we bus them around to states that don't require voter ID, and we just, sign them up under dead people's names. It's easy. So you give people the data that, this is a problem, third world immigration, that the size of government is a problem, that the Federal Reserve is a problem, that centralized control is a problem. You make the arguments to people, and then if they still deny the facts that are right in front of their face, you cut off contact with them. And you just talk to people that can recognize reality. And if you can't recognize reality, you're not going to be a good friend to have around anyway, because you're going to be, denying your own sense data, and, your friend's getting stabbed in an alleyway, and you're like, did he have brown skin? It's probably not even happening. And, it's an absurd example, but you want people around you that, are able to change their mind based on the data that is presented to them. You want actual open-mindedness. The left claims to be open-minded, but presented with any data that conflicts with their egalitarian worldview, they completely lose their fucking mind and call you an evil person. And so you definitely don't want to have people like that in your life, at least to any, significant degree. Because those people are dangerous. If you can't process reality and take in new data and reform your worldview, you're a dangerous robot non-player character. And you're essentially a useful idiot for totalitarianism. And I don't have people like that around me. I have people around me that, if they hear an argument that makes sense, they can process it and decide whether they agree or disagree, and have a counter argument if necessary. But these people that get triggered and just want you to shut up, they don't have brains. They don't have functioning cognitive ability, okay? So they're not good to have around you. So yeah, it's just setting up your own communities and having standards with your friends, and speaking the truth, not being afraid to talk about what you really care about. You talk about what you really care about. You make the arguments that need to be made, and you evaluate the people around you, how they react to them. That's my advice, how we change our culture. Because not that I have any allegiance to white people. I don't give a fuck about white people in general. There's a lot of terrible white people. My in-group preference is with people who can think. If you can think if you're connected to reality, then you're in my clan, you're in my group. I'm down to hang out with you. I'm down to do projects with you and whatnot. If you can process reality and you're not caught up in propaganda and reacting emotionally to ideas that make you uncomfortable, those are the people I like to be around. And I don't hang out with people that can't do that. So that's my tribe. Is you don't even have to necessarily be high IQ. You just have to not be a dumbed down follower, retard. You just have to, and nice tits. Of course, dirtweed, that helps. I'm an ass man generally, but I won't turn down a nice set of tits. But a big fat ass and tattoos won't hurt either. Oh, dude. Harden says, and yes, the right wing is just as full of snowflakes as the left wing. Absolutely. Quit pretending like the right wing is so different from the left. It's not. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not. I mean, the right wing cucks are absolutely even more infuriating because they claim to, have the ideas of small government and free market capitalism and freedom, but they give it a bad name because they're fake. And all they're really doing is the same thing the Democrats are doing is currying favor to these big corporations and big banks that can give them kickbacks after they serve their terms there in government. So, they're just as bad. I mean, power corrupts. There are no good politicians. That's why, having Trump in there was kind of an optimal situation for the corner we were backed into, because he's not a politician, he's a businessman, and he's not taking a presidential salary. He's not getting the stolen tax money, for his salary. So he's literally just in there. He's destroyed his reputation because he knew the left was going to attack him when he talked about immigration. He willfully, threw away his reputation and lost millions of dollars in profits for his business, and taking all these insults from the left for his family and whatnot. And I think his motivations are pure. He literally just wants to make the government function better. He's one of those autistic, business people that's like, this isn't functioning properly. We got to make it right. We got to fix it, fix it. He's one of those dudes. And there's so much obstruction going on, and the swamp runs so deep that you're seeing all the entanglements you get in when you actually get an outsider in the position of the presidency, and all the complications that you run into when the government is this big and this corrupt and this fucking convoluted. Tanya says, how do you feel about his bump stock ban? I don't know what to think about that. Any ban on any firearm accessories or anything is just retarded. If you own your own body, you should own the products of your labor, which is the value you created in the free market. You should own that money, and you should be able to spend that money on whatever the fuck you want. Capitalism, baby. I don't agree with a ban on anything. Federal ban on anything. That's why Trump's not perfect. I mean, he was a Democrat for the most of his life, so he's going in there, and you get in that control position of the levers of power, and you're like, oh, there's all these things I can tinker around with and negotiate with, and it's like, if you give people the power to federally mandate something from the top down, I mean, no matter how pure their intentions are, they're going to be tempted to do some dumb shit. And I feel like Trump does get shamed into doing things sometimes, like that Syria strike he made when the generals convinced him that Assad in Syria was gassing his own people, and like you're basically doing the bidding of the ISIS rebels in Syria and trying to take out Assad's defenses. I didn't like that shit at all. That's probably Trump's biggest fault is he lionizes these generals that are around him because I think he went to military school, but he didn't actually serve in the army, and so he has this exaggerated respect for these military generals, and so he kind of takes their advice. And you saw the crybaby Mattis resign as soon as Trump pulled troops out of Syria. I loved that move by Trump because it totally exposed how the left-wing media is not anti-war at all. They're just anti-Trump and anti-Trump supporter, and essentially just anti-rational spine-filled white people. Any white people with a spine, we hate. War be damned. We need to fight a war if the white people don't want it. So he, oh yeah, the title is satire. There's Zarek. We were talking about this Nobel Prize winning geneticist who's being called racist for claiming, what the data shows that on average white people have a higher IQ than black people, and it's perfectly fine if you say that black people on average have bigger dicks and they can dunk basketballs way better and they can run way faster. That's fine. But if you say that white people on average have more intellectual capacity when it comes to abstract reasoning, well, you're Nazi. The next step is basically genocide if you say white people have any skills whatsoever. And so there's this big hilarious. I would advise everybody to go on Politically Incorrect on 4chan. There's a big thread about it, and everybody arguing back and forth. Harden says, and the right-wing media produces just as much fake news as the left-wing media. I agree. Because they're both just clickbait machines. They're both just playing to their advertisers and trying to get views, and it's all sensationalism and nonsense. And there's no actual news being reported, especially on cable news. It's all sensationalist nonsense bullshit. It's a televised tabloid is all it is, because that's what happened when they brought in the advertising dollars for these cable news places. If it bleeds, it leads. It just became all about views and not about truth. Brooks Riley, welcome to the stream. He says, pardon not Jim Webb. I'm trying to think of one of the minor Democratic candidates during the 2016 election. However, I misnamed him. I don't know who you're talking about. Sadiq says, are you saying this on basis of the last 200, 300 years, or are you looking at entire human history? On regarding what, sir? IQ? Well, yeah, it'd have to be the last 200, 300 years, because that's before that there wasn't an IQ test that was standardized. So that's the data we have to go upon, and it correlates with the evolutionary biology information we have. Stefan Molyneux has talked about this before. If you think about it, different species of races of human beings evolved in different parts of the globe with drastically different climatological pressures on their evolution. And so when you think about, the main thing that human beings have to do is they have to, have shelter and they have to eat. And so those are the things that intelligence is going to help you do. And so if you live in a tropical environment like sub-Saharan Africa, food is all around you. It's plentiful. So you don't have to, be extraordinarily creative in order to get food. You just have to have the physical capacity to either chase it down and kill it, or forage it from up in the trees and whatnot. So those needs, those evolutionary pressures would have been largely physical. Now, if you think of the people up in further north in the prehistoric Europe, they would have had to deal with much colder climates, and so they would have had to come up with the ingenuity to build a shelter that would keep them alive, and then they would have to have the long-term planning skills to stockpile enough food to make it through the winter. So you have to have those long-term planning skills and deferral of gratification, so you don't eat all of your food before winter and then starve. So those are just some general outlines of evolutionary pressures that would lead to the deferral of gratification and long-term planning that goes along with higher IQ. And so, there's nothing superior about it. It's not like, oh, whites are superior because they have higher intelligence. It's like, no, we have different characteristics because we evolved in radically different climates on the planet. I mean, tell me you're superior to a black dude when you play some basketball with him. I learned that lesson in high school many times over. There was nothing superior about me on the basketball court. I could sit over and diagram and use my intelligence to draw up plays and strategize of how I was going to play basketball. But it didn't fucking matter once we got out on the court. Different people are better at different shit. And that's what the left, for some reason, cannot admit. They have to admit that we're all they have to say that we're all the same, and the only differences between us are a result of white racism, so that they can browbeat white people and get them to continue paying their huge tax bills and funding the welfare state, which is the only which illegal immigration and the welfare state is the only reason there even still is a Democratic Party. So it's kind of a survival mechanism to have this propaganda narrative that white people are evil because, on average, straight white males, the most demonized group, don't buy the left wing's horseshit. So they're not as easily propagandized, and so they have to be demonized and, shut up. And if they let the IQ statistics fly, then, black people and Hispanic people might be like, oh, that's not necessarily hateful, I guess. It seems to just be true that there's something to this, higher average intelligence. Then they might start, stop listening to the propaganda from the left and start listening to the white people who are talking about libertarianism and the non-aggression principle and these abstract concepts, and they might actually take the extra time it needs to listen to these people and consider their ideas instead of just writing them off as racist psychos. And that's what the left really doesn't want. They don't want the white people and black people and Hispanic people to unite and start sharing ideas and really come to the conclusion that the biggest problem in society is the government, and we need to get it the fuck out of our way so we can start working together and have a prosperous society. That's the ultimate thing they do not want. They have to push this identity politics narrative in order to keep us at each other's throats and divided, so that nobody stops and pauses and looks and like, why are we letting them steal our tax money? They don't want you asking that question. Why are we forced to fund all of this bullshit that seems super inefficient and ineffective? Why do they force us to pay for this? They definitely do not want you asking that question. They just want, the thinking white people who ask those questions to be demonized as white supremacists and Nazis, and and to be totally written off. Asians have a northern climate as well, yeah. Why Asians have slightly higher IQs. I feel like they evolved in climates that got really cold, like Siberia and in those areas. I'm not real familiar with the genetic, the evolutionary biology narrative with Asians. I mean, East Asians, you look at the data, East Asians typically score higher on average IQ than white people. But there's something that white people have that Asians don't have. Like for some reason, East Asians accept communism ruling their country. Like in China, they're supposed to be, they're supposed to be smart, but there's all different kinds of intelligence also. IQ is just a measure of like the raw horsepower of your brain. I mean, there's certain things like creative thinking and emotional intelligence and like the capacity to be funny. Like as far as like intelligence being funny, black people are some of the smartest people on the face of the planet. Like there's an intelligence to being funny and like getting a vibe and like making jokes off of the vibe. Black people are phenomenal at that. Asians, like their intelligence seems to be focused on like replication and industriousness and like raw data processing, like math and engineering and like building things, but not necessarily innovating things. Like you see these replica cities in Asia where they build a small like replica of Hollywood and it looks exactly like it, but they didn't create Hollywood. I mean, white people and Jews did that. So, yeah. Yeah, there's a quick-wittedness to black people too. I hang out with mostly black women, and that's what I like. I like the banter between me and black women. It's just it's so fun. Just like because they also have they come from that culture of roasting, so it's like they're not easily offended. And so you can, they'll just start laughing their ass off if you start talking about how goofy their fucking shoes look or like something they're wearing or what they're doing with their hair and you start roasting them. They love it, dude. They're not like a lot of these white women where it's like, oh my God, what are you fundamentally saying about me when you say that? That's kind of disrespectful that you would even take it to that level. And it's like so exhausting. It's just like, can we just have fun? Like, I don't know. Yeah, there's kind of a, high IQ isn't everything either. You don't always want to be around a bunch of neurotic, high IQ people. It's kind of exhausting. There's a certain value to being around lower IQ people that don't necessarily give as much of a fuck and, they have that carefree attitude toward life, and that's the balance. We balance each other out, and if we just recognize the differences between us, we could recognize that the differences in outcomes aren't always a result of some evil oppression going on. It's just the natural unfolding of the different types of human beings. We all do shit different. The feminist low T beta males and gays just won't breed. Brooks says, no reason to sterilize anyone, just do decentralize our society to a point where you can self-regulate and self-govern. Yeah, we've got this big centralized state apparatus that that you know, that's what fundamentally divides us, because we're forced to finance the shortcomings of the other groups of people. You know, like free healthcare means you're forced to subsidize the horrible decisions of obese people. So you can't separate yourself from the people that stuff McDonald's in their head all day and need their leg amputated. You can't have any cultural separation from those people because you're forced to finance their operations through wonderful Obamacare. Because Obama cared, okay? He cared about redistributing your income at the point of a gun and making monopolies out of insurance companies and raising your premiums. Communism, baby, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. Glad to have you lovely people with me on a Monday. It's over here raining in LA. It's all fucking rainy. I'm gonna take a little tinkle break here. I'll be right back. The federal outrage chancellor here is gonna let the members of the federal outrage commune listen to the religious practice of hearing his flow in the background, and I'd like people to grade me on a scale of 1 to 10. How much you like the sounds of the federal outrage chancellor's flow. All right, be right back. Oh, so much better, ladies and gentlemen. I've been emailing back and forth with the people associated with Mr. Owen Benjamin, and I may potentially have the Big Bear himself on my podcast. We're in negotiations right now. He said on his podcast, he said on his live stream that he wanted to start doing his fans podcast, and I got to credit him with this idea of doing daily live streams along with my getting up on stage every day. It's been really fun, and I love hanging out with you guys and working my ideas out in real time and talking shit and whatnot. And hopefully I'll be able to get Mr. Owen Benjamin on here, and we can talk some shit back and forth and chop it up. That'll be fun, man. Hardin says the medical system is vegan, being forced to subsidize non-vegans. In a sane society, non-vegans would get zero medical services and die off from their self-inflicted diseases. Oh my God. That is super hardcore, Hardin. Jesus. I don't think there's anything wrong with eating some protein. You get your essential amino acids there. And I eat eggs and beef pretty much every day. And I feel tremendous. You just got to balance it out with some vegetables. And, Stay active. Um, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with eating meat. Get your vitamin B12 and your iron. Keep your feet warm at night. Yeah, Tanya's gonna eat a steak for you, bud. That's it. That's it right there. Yeah, I got a little countertop grill in here in my apartment. That heats up pretty goddamn hot. I throw the burgers on there, dude. Ooh. Season them up with a little red wine vinegar and garlic salt. You know it, baby. We getting that carnivore on. That's keeps your testosterone high. Keep your energy levels up. You get the B12. You get the iron in there. Keep your feet warm. And you ready to go. You ready to go out there and talk shit to communists. You throw in a beer or two, and God damn it, that's America. 1776, baby. Red blood, red meat. Come see me. Yeah, I make sure to eat a lot of broccoli though. Got to balance it out with the veggies there. And I don't eat bread or carbohydrates unless I work out beforehand. That's my deal. Is earn your carbs. I need to write a goddamn book on this because people don't understand the concept. But what bodybuilders do, and it's called carb cycling. And it's how you stay lean and eat whatever the fuck you want at the same time. So you just do low carb until you get a craving for some pizza or some ice cream or whatever, and then you go to the gym on an empty stomach on some caffeine or whatever, or a small meal, and small low carb meal, and then you go to the gym, you lift a bunch of weights, you tire yourself out, you wear your muscles out, you deplete yourself of all that glycogen stored up in your muscles, and then you can dig on whatever you want. I routinely go to the gym and I'll go on an empty stomach and work out, lift weights, eat an entire pizza, and then a whole pint of ice cream, and then I'll wake up like that. My vape is firing by itself. But you still got the flat stomach, even though you're eating whatever you want if you work out before you do it. So earn your carbohydrates, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, the robot dick. I feel like I'm honoring Bill Hicks by using this thing because, you don't want to be that sad motherfucker that dies of pancreatic cancer at 33. Because he had a lot more to say. And I'm going to try to, keep this train rolling for as long as I possibly can. Eat your veggies. Stay away from the cigarettes. Yeah. This is blueberry. And I found these little pods that are like slightly bigger and slightly less expensive. Actually, half as expensive. It's like $15 for a pack of 4 of these, and it's like $30 for a pack of 4 of the regular Jewel pods with even less liquid in them. But I still go through them pretty quick. I do like, 1.5 to 2 a day of these pods, but I'm thinking about changing to another vape where I can just fill it with the nicotine salt actual liquid. Because that's what I do right now. I pop these motherfuckers open and just refill them with nicotine salt, and do that. But it always gets all over your fingers, and it's annoying to have to crack them open and shit. I'm looking to get a different model where it just has an opening where you can pour the liquid in. I did have this fucking thing, this fucking cannon, which some of you have seen before. It produces clouds, that Al Gore would be really upset with. It doubles my carbon footprint every time I hit it. But it's currently not working. It won't charge up. for some goddamn reason. I think the battery is dead. So yeah, I just want to come on here and talk about just the absurdity of, people calling objective data racist. And poor James Watson, that 90-year-old fuck, getting labeled a racist for his life's work and getting his Nobel Prizes revoked. Yeah, the Nobel Prize is essentially worthless at this point. If you're gonna revoke James Watson and give it to Obama, give Obama a peace prize for continually being at war every single day of his presidency and destroying the Middle East and having the secret drone program and peace prize. It's it's about as prestigious as the Golden Globes or the Oscars are anymore. It's all about how much you hate Donald Trump. That's how you get an award nowadays. If you give a speech about how much you hate Donald Trump and you hate white people, and that's the things that are being rewarded, ladies and gentlemen. But I am still writing scripts for Hollywood. I am still trying to break into that system. I've got a couple people reading my scripts right now that I sent off the past couple of days. And, hopefully they just don't Google my name and see my streams. Hopefully they read my scripts beforehand and give me a big fat check, and then they can't take it back, even though they've now seen my streams talking about race and IQ. And just how evil and bigoted I am that I look at the data and I make my own conclusions. It's just horrendous. Brooke says, I do not have nearly enough characters for this. However, I believe if you enable self-segregation and self-governance, lines will naturally form along cultural and economic divides. I agree. Because we're genetically predisposed to prefer being around people that are more like us. And there's nothing wrong with that. And people recognize that with any group of people besides white people. Beyonce can have a halftime show at the Super Bowl and give the Black Power symbol. Cain Velasquez can have brown pride tattooed across his chest. Jews can say, my daughter needs to marry a Jewish man. Everybody can have an in-group preference except white people. Like if a white guy gets mad that his daughter marries a black guy, well, he's just a horrible bigot. He can't have any preference that his white daughter marries a white guy because, then he's forced to shave his mustache like this and try to commit genocide, according to the narrative. You can't have any in-group preference if you got the peach beige skin there. Which is hilarious because we're supposed to be, the patriarchs and the oppressive overlords of this society with all this systemic racism that we've set up, but we're the number one people that you can openly criticize without consequence. And it's like, what a privilege. I get to be, openly shat upon by every other group, and I can't respond, or I'm the bad person. So it's all about the left trying to eliminate the people that recognize their bullshit. So the people that recognize the left wing's horseshit and recognize that socialism and communism are destructive and evil, and that want a small government, are generally straight white males in America. And so to accomplish their agenda, they have to openly demonize straight white males and get people to automatically question anything we say and respond with nonsense arguments like racist, sexist, homophobe, bigot. And so that's the agenda, and I don't think it's working. People see through it too much, you know. And Trump has helped that a lot. He's helped push back against that narrative, which may be his greatest contribution to the country, is standing up in the face of political correctness and not giving a fuck. Because people need that model to have the confidence to do it in their own life. They have to be able to see someone do it and not get destroyed. And so that might be Trump's greatest contribution. Oh, well, it's on that blunt time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun today. I'll probably wind it down. We're going on 80 minutes here. But yeah, it's support James Watson. Support the data. Support the evidence. And don't bow down to nonsense, bullshit, non-arguments. And keep saying what's true. I'll probably be sharing some clips out on at Nick Jordan himself on Instagram, as I do. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Nick Jordan. Nick Jordan on Facebook. And the Outrage Cast, all one word, on all the podcast apps, iTunes and whatnot, Stitcher. And yeah, I probably gotta get out there and make some goddamn rent money on this Postmates situation. Hold on real quick. Hardin says masculinity in general is being demonized, not just white males. The Hotep movement, which is the black counterpart to the alt-right, is ridiculed for being too male. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about Hotep. And I feel like those are the kind of black dudes I really I get along with, that are hyper masculine and you know, think political correctness is horseshit and say whatever they want. But it's still, the target is still mostly over white males, because you know, that white males have more of a conscience about their own behavior, and they're more prone to feeling guilty and flagellating themselves for their own behavior. Because you don't see a lot of rappers being called out for their misogyny or their, you know, toxic masculinity. I mean, rap is the number one, basically the number one entertainment genre in the entire world right now. And, you know, you don't see them being called out. I mean, R. Kelly, R&B singer, is finally being called out after, you know, decade ago plus. He, you know, there was a video footage of him pissing on a 14-year-old girl. And it's just now people are getting around to saying he's a bad dude. So I mean, people are a lot more lenient with black males. I think it's also because of the bigotry of low expectations on the left. They literally look at black people as like lower existence human beings. Like, so they give them a lot more leeway for their behavior, because they don't hold them as personally responsible, and they don't think they have as much free will. That's why they feel like they need, that black people need the welfare system, and they need to be taken care of, or else they just can't do it on their own. And that's the bigotry of low expectations that is held there on the left. Yeah, they see them as votes, as a voting block of sheep. Exactly. That's what they see them as. And they see them as easily manipulatable. So they're not as quick to criticize them for their behavior, because it's like, oh, that's just the blacks. They don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to get by with all the white oppression going on. And it's like, that's actually racist to assume that, black people don't have any less personal responsibility in their own actions than anybody else. So it's getting there a little bit. Like Kevin Hart and R. Kelly now are getting taken to task on some bullshit. Well, R. Kelly is probably more legitimate if he rapes underage girls, but Kevin Hart just made some jokes about gay people, and now he's being thrown over the coals. And so they're starting to creep into criticizing black people, black males. But, it's still for the most part centered around the fucking straight white males there. All right, everybody. I'll probably sign off for today. I gotta go out there in this rainstorm in fucking LA and deliver some goddamn food to people and make some rent money, baby. We gotta do it. So yeah, it's a fun stream here. I'll get it posted up, and I'll post some shit on Instagram or whatnot. And I'll catch you beautiful motherfuckers tomorrow.